The desperate call crystal prime harmony. Felt the fear spreading through the collective mind like poison in water. The beautiful blue worlds of the outer rim were gone now, consumed by the darkness that ate everything in its path. The void swarm had found them. Harmony's crystalline body pulsed with soft light as she connected to the emergency council around the great chamber. Other Zapirians glowed in different colors, each representing a different colony world, but too many spaces stood empty now. Too many lights had gone dark forever. The Kepler 7 system fell yesterday, reported Crystal Commander Azure. His usual blue glow had faded to a dim gray. 30 million souls. The swarm consumed them all in less than 6 hours. The news hit the council like a physical blow. Harmony felt the collective grief wash over her. The Zapirians had known peace for over 10,000 years. They had evolved beyond violence, beyond conflict. Their worlds were gardens of crystal cities and floating platforms where art and science flourished. War was something they read about in ancient history, not something that happened to civilized beings. How long until they reached the core worlds? Asked Crystal Sage Violet, her elderly form flickering with worry. Azure's light dimmed further. Our scientists estimate 3 weeks, maybe 4 if we evacuate the outer defense stations. Defense stations. The words felt wrong. In Harmony's mind, the Zapirians had built those stations to study stars and welcome visitors, not to fight wars. They had no weapons, no shields, no way to stop the endless hunger that swept toward them. We must send the beacon, Harmony said finally. The decision felt like swallowing broken glass. We have no choice. The beacon was their last hope, built centuries ago as a first contact device. It could send messages across the galaxy using quantum entanglement. The signal would reach any civilization advanced enough to understand it. The Zephyrians had always imagined using it to greet new friends among the stars, not to beg for salvation. But what if the ones who answer are like them? Whispered Crystal Youth Echo. She was barely past her first century, too young to have learned to hide her fear. Harmony understood the terror in that question. What if the beacon reached another species like the void swarm? What if their cry for help only brought more monsters? We will take that risk, Harmony decided. Ready the beacon. The great quantum transmitter sat in the center of their capital world, a tower of living crystal that reached into space itself. As the technicians prepared it, Harmony composed the message that would travel faster than light to unknown ears. To any who received this signal, she began, her thoughts flowing into the beacon's memory banks. We are the Zephyrian collective, a peaceful civilization under attack by an aggressive force we cannot stop. We have no weapons, no military, no way to defend ourselves. Our people are dying. Our worlds are being destroyed. If there is anyone out there who can help us, please, we beg you to come. The message included star charts, tactical data about the void swarm, and detailed information about Zephyrian biology and culture. They wanted their potential rescuers to understand exactly what they were being asked to save. Message prepared, reported the head technician. Ready to transmit. Send it, Harmony commanded. Send it to every corner of the galaxy. The beacon pulsed with brilliant light, and the message shot out into space at impossible speeds. Now all they could do was wait and hope that someone would Answer: far away in a solar system the Zapirians had never heard of. The message reached Earth deep space. Monitoring station. The facility orbited Neptune, constantly scanning the void for any sign of alien life. For 50 years they had found nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional pulsar. Lieutenant Maria Santos was finishing her night shift when the computer started screaming. Every alert in the station went off at once, creating a noise like the end of the world. She rushed to the main console, her heart racing. What the hell is that? She muttered, staring at readings that made no sense. Energy signatures off the charts, quantum fluctuations that shouldn't exist, and buried in all of it something that looked like data. Get me Admiral Chen, she ordered the communications officer right now. Admiral Sarah Chen had been Earth's leading expert on alien contact protocols for 20 years. She had written the books, run the simulations, prepared humanity for the day they would meet their cosmic neighbors. But when the call came at 3:00 in the morning, she knew this was different. Admir, you need to see this, Santos said when Chen arrived at the station. We've received a message, a real message from space. Chen felt her pulse quicken as she reviewed the data. The signal had come from a star system over 200 light-years away. The encoding was alien, but clearly artificial. Someone out there was trying to talk to them. Can you decode it? She asked the linguistics team. Dr. James Park, the station's xenolinguistics expert, nodded slowly. It's actually not that difficult. They included mathematical references, star charts, even what looks like a basic translation matrix. Whoever sent this really wanted us to understand it. It took 6 hours to fully decode the message. When they finally played back the translation, the command center fell silent. The alien voice was musical, like crystal chimes in a soft wind, but the words it spoke were desperate. They're asking for help, Chen said quietly. They're under attack and they have no way to defend themselves. Should we alert the Security Council? Asked her aide. Chen studied the star charts the aliens had provided. The Zahirian worlds were rich in resources, but had no strategic value to Earth. This wasn't about conquest or politics. These beings were dying, and they had reached out to the only species close enough to help prep the third expeditionary fleet. She ordered full deployment. We leave for Zapirian space in 12 hours. Admiral, shouldn't we discuss this with? There's no time. Chen cut him off. Look at their tactical data. This void swarm is moving fast. If we wait for committees and debates, there won't be anyone left to save. Third Expeditionary Fleet was humanity's newest deep space force, 60 ships, designed for long-range exploration and first contact missions. They carried diplomats, scientists, and cultural specialists alongside their military crews. Chen had always imagined using them to build bridges between civilizations. Now she was sending them to war. As the fleet prepared for departure, Chen recorded her own message. If they survived this mission, historians would want to know why humanity had risked everything to save complete strangers. Today we received a cry for help from across the galaxy. She began. A peaceful species is being destroyed by something they call the Void Swarm. They have no weapons, no military, no way to fight back. They are artists and scientists, builders and dreamers, and they are going to die unless someone helps them. She paused, thinking of the crystalline voice in the message, so beautiful and so afraid. We are that someone we don't know, these aliens we've never seen their faces or walked on their worlds. But they reached out to us in their darkest hour, and we will not turn away. Today, humanity goes to war, not for conquest or glory, but because it's the right thing to do. The fleet launched 6 hours ahead of schedule. 60 ships filled with 20,000 humans racing toward a distant star to fight an enemy they had never seen, for people they had never met. In Zapperian space, Harmony watched the skies and waited for an answer that might never come. First contact. Protocol's Commander Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavor, watching an alien solar system grow larger on the main screen. After 6 weeks of faster-than-light travel, they had finally reached Zaffirin space. The journey had given him time to study everything they knew about their new alien neighbors, which wasn't much. The Zaphirians were crystalline beings who lived on low-gravity worlds. They seemed peaceful, maybe even pacifist. Their cities were described as works of art rather than military fortresses. Most importantly, they were in serious trouble, picking up energy signatures from the 4th planet, reported Lieutenant Commander Walsh from the sensor station. Looks like a massive population center. Beautiful architecture, sir, unlike anything we've ever seen. Rodriguez nodded. Any sign of these void swarm hostiles? Negative, sir, but there's debris in the outer system. Looks like the remains of several space stations. The evidence of destruction sent a chill through the bridge crew. Whatever had attacked the Zapperians had been thorough and efficient. Rodriguez had seen war before, but this felt different. This was extermination. Sir, we're receiving a transmission, announced the communications officer. It's beautiful. The voice that filled the bridge was like nothing any human had ever heard. Musical notes that somehow formed words, crystal chimes that carried meaning even through the universal translator. It sounded like a song. Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves. The voice said, we are grateful you have come, but we must know your intentions. Rodriguez straightened his uniform and activated the reply channel. First contact. Protocols had been drilled into every officer in the fleet. Be respectful, be clear, avoid any action that might be seen as threatening. This is Commander Marcus Rodriguez of the United Earth ship Endeavor, representing the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet of the United Earth Alliance. We received your distress signal and have come to provide assistance against the hostile force you call the Void Swarm. The pause that followed lasted almost a full minute. When the Zaffirin voice returned, it carried a new note of what sounded like fear. Did you say Earth? From the solar system? That's correct. We're humans from Earth. We're here to help. Another long pause. Rodriguez looked around the bridge, confused. This wasn't how he'd imagined first contact going. Where was the excitement, the wonder of meeting another intelligent species? Commander Rodriguez, the voice said finally, we need to discuss this in person. Can you meet us on our capital world? Please bring only a small group, and please do not be offended by our initial reactions. 20 minutes later, Rodriguez found himself in a shuttle with Dr. Emily Carter, the fleet's lead xenologist, and Sergeant Mike Thompson, his security chief. The shuttle bay of the Zaffirin Station was unlike anything inhuman. Engineering, the walls curved like grown. Crystal pulsing with soft light that seemed almost alive. The Zephyrians, waiting for them, were beautiful in an alien way, tall, graceful beings that looked like they were carved from precious stones. Their leader glowed with a warm golden light that shifted to nervous orange as the humans approached. "I am Crystal Prime Harmony," she said, her voice even more musical in person. Welcome to our world." Rodriguez smiled and extended his hand in the universal human gesture of greeting. Harmony stared at it for a moment, then very carefully touched it. With one crystalline finger, the contact lasted only a second before she pulled back. "Forgive me," she said quickly. "It's just your density, your bone structure. You're from a Class 12 death world, aren't you?" Dr. Carter looked confused. "Class 12, I'm not familiar with that classification. The galactic standard," Harmony explained, her light flickering nervously. "Class 1 worlds are garden paradises. Class 5 worlds have some environmental hazards. Class 10 worlds are considered barely habitable. Class 12 worlds are," she paused, searching for words. "Class 12 worlds kill everything that tries to live on them." Rodriguez felt a strange mix of pride and confusion. "Earth's not that bad. Sure, we have some dangerous wildlife and the occasional natural disaster, but humans do just fine there." The look of absolute terror that crossed Harmony's crystalline features told him he'd said something very wrong. "Dangerous wildlife," she whispered. "Natural disasters, Commander. Our most fearsome predator is a creature that grows to roughly the size of your hand and eats small insects. Our worst natural disaster in recorded history was a dust storm that delayed air travel for 6 hours. Sergeant Thompson laughed. "Man, that sounds nice. Back home in Australia, we've got spiders that can kill you, snakes that can kill you, jellyfish that can kill you, even some of the plants want to kill you, and that's just the wildlife." Harmony's glow shifted to a pale, frightened white. "And you evolved fighting these things?" "Sure," Thompson said cheerfully. "Keeps us sharp." Dr. Carter, realizing the cultural gap they were dealing with, stepped in. "Perhaps we should focus on the current threat. You mentioned this void swarm. Can you tell us more about them?" Harmony led them to a crystal display that showed the galaxy in 3 dimensions. Dark patches spread like a disease across several star systems. "They appeared 30 years ago," she explained. "We thought they were just another species seeking new worlds, but they don't colonize. They don't build, they consume. They eat everything living and then move on to the next system." "How many ships do they have?" Rodriguez asked, his military mind already working on the tactical situation. "Ships." Harmony looked confused. "Commander, they don't use ships as you understand them. They are ships, living vessels the size of small moons filled with smaller creatures that serve as their weapons and tools." Rodriguez studied the tactical data with growing unease. The void swarm wasn't just an alien military force. It was something completely outside human experience. Biohips that could think for themselves, weapons that were actually living creatures, tactics that no human strategist had ever conceived. "How do they fight?" Dr. Carter asked. "They swarm," Harmony said simply. "Millions of small creatures led by larger ones. They overwhelm any defense through pure numbers, but we have no defenses. We've been peaceful for 10,000 years. We have no weapons, no soldiers, no concept of warfare. That's going to change, Ray. Rodriguez said grimly. We'll help you build defenses, train your people. No. Harmony's voice was firm despite her fear. We will not become killers even to save ourselves. That's why we called for help. We hope to find someone who could fight for us while we remain true to our nature. Thompson whistled low. Lady, with all due respect, sometimes you have to fight or die. We would rather die than become monsters, Harmony replied. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Rodriguez's communicator. Commander, this is the Endeavor. We've got multiple contacts approaching from the outer system, big ones. I think the Void Swarm has found us. Rodriguez was already moving toward the shuttle. How long until they reach us? 6 hours, sir. Maybe less. Get the fleet into defensive positions. All ships combat alert. He turned to Harmony. We and LT Unk and GT LL protect your world, but we need to know everything you can tell us about their tactics. As they rushed back to the shuttle, Harmony's light pulsed with a mixture of gratitude and terror. The humans had come to help, just as she'd hoped, but now she was beginning to understand what kind of help they would provide. These weren't peaceful explorers or wise teachers. These were warriors from a world that had tried to kill them every day of their evolution. They spoke of violence as casually as Zahirians discussed art. They had weapons, tactics, and a willingness to fight that terrified her almost as much as the approaching swarm. But as the shuttle raced back to the human fleet, Harmony found herself hoping that sometimes monsters were exactly what you needed to fight other monsters. Unleashing the Deathworlders. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UES Valkyrie, watching the tactical display with the cold focus that had earned her command of the 3rd Fleet. The Void Swarm was 2 hours out and approaching fast. What she saw on the sensors defied everything she knew about space warfare. Confirmed those readings. She ordered Lieutenant Torres at the sensor station. Confirmed. Admiral, 17 biovessels ranging from frigate size to Jesus. That big one has to be 20 km long. They're not showing any conventional drive signatures. Somehow they're just swimming through space. Chen had seen the video files the Zaporans had provided, but watching the real thing was different. The Void Swarm ships moved like living creatures, twisting and flowing through space with an organic grace that made her skin crawl. They weren't built, they were grown. All ships. This is Admiral Chen, she announced over the fleet-wide channel. We have incoming hostiles. 17 bioships, unknown capabilities. Definitely hostile. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for a peaceful species that's never known war. Don't let them down. Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled back from the Endeavor. Admiral, we've got Crystal Prime Harmony on board. She's providing real-time intelligence on swarm tactics. Good. All ships combat spread. The Leviathan and Titan will form the center line. Destroyers take the flanks. And remember, these things are alive. Conventional tactics might not work. Captain Elena Vasquez felt the familiar pre-battle calm settle over her as she checked her marine armor one final time. The U.S. Reaper was humanity's newest assault ship, designed specifically for boarding actions and close combat. If they were going to fight living ships, someone would have to get inside them. Listen up, Devil. Dogs, she addressed her Marines over the comm. We've studied the intel. These bio ships are hollow inside, like giant space whales. They're filled with smaller creatures that serve as weapons. And crew, our job is to get inside and cause as much damage as possible. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, veteran of the Titan colony uprising, raised her hand. Ma'am, any idea what we'll be breathing in there? The Zephyrians think it's an acidic atmosphere, probably toxic to humans. Full environmental suits, people, and remember, everything in there wants to kill us. The Marines checked their weapons with practiced efficiency, pulse rifles for long range, plasma cutters for close work, and good old-fashioned explosives for when things got really bad. They had trained for every possible scenario except this one: boarding alien biohips filled with unknown horrors. Dr. James Park was fighting his own kind of battle in the Valkyrie Science Lab. The Zephyrians had provided data on the void swarm's biology, and what he'd learned kept him awake at night. The creatures weren't just individual organisms. They were part of a vast hive mind that could adapt and learn in real time. Admiral, he reported over the comm, I've been analyzing the swarm's neural patterns. They're not just using hive mind communication, they're using quantum entanglement to share information instantaneously across their entire species. Every tactic we use, every weakness we exploit, the whole swarm will know about it immediately. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying we can't surprise them? Not conventionally, but I might have an idea. If we can introduce a logic virus into their communication network, we could turn their greatest strength against them. The first Void Swarm ship came into visual range 20 minutes later. Through the Valkyrie's main screen, the human crew got their first real look at the enemy. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a giant jellyfish made of living metal and bone, tendrils that might have been weapons or sensory organs writhed around its main body. All ships engaged at will. Chen ordered. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Particle beams and missile salvos lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. The Zephyrians, watching from their orbital stations, had never seen such controlled violence. To them it looked like humans had turned warfare into an art form, but the Void Swarm adapted quickly. The bioships absorbed the first wave of attacks, their living hulls rippling and reforming around the damage. Smaller creatures poured out of the larger vessels like antibodies, fighting an infection. They're learning, reported Commander Rodriguez. Our second volley was only half as effective. Chen gritted her teeth. This was exactly what Park had warned her about. All ships switched to rotating attack patterns. Don't give them time to adapt. Vasquez, you're cleared for boarding action. Reaper broke from the main fleet and dove toward the nearest bioship like a hawk attacking prey. Point defense systems tried to track it, but Captain Vasquez had learned to fly in Earth's atmosphere, dodging storms and gravitational shears that would tear apart most alien ships. Boarding tubes ready, reported her navigator. But, Admiral, we don't know if our equipment will work on living hull material. Only one way to find out, Vasquez replied and fired the boarding torpedoes. The magnetic clamps hit the biohip's hull and began cutting through what looked like bone and metal fused together. To everyone's surprise, they worked perfectly. Within minutes, Vasquez and her Marines were inside an alien vessel unlike anything in human experience. The interior was a nightmare. Mixture of technology and biology. Corridors that pulsed like arteries led deeper into the ship. The air was thick with spores and filled with a constant humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Jesus Christ, whispered Private Johnson, looking around at walls that bled when they were touched. This thing is alive. Stay focused, Vasquez ordered, leading her team deeper into the ship. Remember, we're here to cause damage. Plant your charges and let's get out. They encountered their first swarm creature. 30 m in. It was roughly humanoid but covered in chitinous armor that seemed to shift and adapt as they watched. When Santos fired her pulse rifle, the creature's armor hardened against energy weapons. When Johnson switched to kinetic rounds, the armor softened to absorb impact. These things adapt faster than we can shoot them, Santos reported. Vasquez smiled grimly behind her helmet. Then we stop giving them time to adapt. Fix bayonets, Marines. We're doing this the old-fashioned way. The close combat that followed would have horrified the peaceful Zapirians. Human Marines fought with a savagery that their evolution had bred into them, using tactics that no civilized species would consider. They fought dirty, used the environment against their enemies, and turned every disadvantage into a weapon. When the creatures adapted to their rifles, the Marines used combat knives. When they adapted to those, the Marines used improvised weapons torn from the ship itself. When all else failed, they used their bare hands and the kind of determination that could only come from a species that had fought its way to the top of a Deathworld food chain. Meanwhile, Dr. Park was having his own breakthrough. Working with the Zapirian data, he had developed what he called a logic bomb, a piece of code designed to exploit the swarm's quantum communication network. Admiral, I need a direct interface with their communication system, he reported. If Vasquez can get to their command center, I can upload the virus. You heard him. Captain Chen told Vasquez over the comm. Change of mission, find their brain and plug Park in. Fighting their way through corridors that seemed to actively resist their presence, Vasquez and her team found what could only be the ship's command center. It was a spherical chamber filled with neural tissue that pulsed with patterns of light. At the center sat something that might have been the ship's captain, a creature the size of a small building with dozens of tentacles connected to the organic control systems. Park, you're up, Vasquez said, connecting her suit's computer to the nearest neural interface. The upload took 30 seconds. That felt like hours. Around them, the ship's defenses were converging on their position. Creatures poured into the chamber from every opening. The Marines formed a defensive circle and held their ground with the kind of stubborn courage that had carried humanity through 10,000 years of warfare. When the upload completed, the effect was immediate and devastating. The logic virus spread through the swarm's quantum network like wildfire, introducing contradictory commands and paradoxical logic loops. Ships that had been coordinating perfectly suddenly began firing on each other. Creatures that had been working in perfect harmony turned on their neighbors. It worked, Park shouted over the comm. Their hive mind is collapsing, but the victory came at a cost. The bioship they were on was dying, its neural systems overloading from the virus. Vasquez and her Marines Had minutes to escape before the entire vessel collapsed. Move, 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 she ordered, leading her team back through corridors that were now actively trying to digest them. They made it back to the Reaper with seconds to spare, watching from the safety of space as the bioship tore itself apart from the inside. Around them, the rest of the swarm fleet was suffering similar fates. Ships collided with each other, weapons fired randomly, and the perfect coordination that had made them so dangerous dissolved into chaos. All ships pressed the attack. Admiral Chen ordered, "They're vulnerable now. Don't give them time to recover." The swarms, nightmare deep in the void between star systems, the Overmind felt something it had not experienced in a million years of conquest. Fear. The massive bio construct that served as the void swarm's central intelligence floated the darkness, its 1,000 km bulk pulsing with confused signals from across the galaxy. 17 hive ships lost, not just destroyed, corrupted. Their neural networks had turned against themselves, introducing chaos into the perfect order that had consumed 70 civilizations. For the first time since the swarm had begun its expansion, it had encountered prey that fought back with equal savagery. The Overmind sent out tendrils of thought, gathering information from every corner of its domain. What it learned made its ancient consciousness recoil in shock. The creatures that had devastated its fleet called themselves humans, and they came from a world that should not have been able to support intelligent life. Class 12 Deathworld. The galactic classification was clear. Worlds of that type killed everything that tried to evolve there, yet somehow impossibly. These humans had not just survived, but thrived. They had turned their planets' attempts to kill them into advantages. They had evolved to be living weapons. The Overmind had consumed peaceful species, aggressive ones, even hive minds like itself, but it had never encountered anything like this. These humans fought with a creativity that bordered on insanity, using tactics that no sane species would consider. They turned their own disadvantages into weapons. They adapted faster than the swarm itself. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy it. Admiral Chen stood in the Valky's war room, studying star charts with Dr. Park and Commander Rodriguez. The immediate threat to the Zafarans was over, but intelligence reports suggested the main swarm force was still out there, probably regrouping for a massive counterattack. Based on the neural patterns we captured, Park explained, the swarm operates on a hierarchical system. What we fought was just a scouting force. The real threat is something they call the Overmind, a massive bioconstruct that coordinates the entire species. Rodriguez leaned over the tactical display. How massive are we talking? Best estimates, roughly the size of a small moon. It's surrounded by thousands of hive ships, each one larger than what we just fought. If it decides to come after us personally, Chen nodded grimly, we'll need more than one fleet to handle that. She activated the long-range communicator. Priority message to Earth Command. Request immediate deployment of the entire Deep Space Navy. We've found humanity's first real war. The message would take weeks to reach Earth, even with quantum communication. By then it might be too late. Chen turned back to the star charts, looking for any advantage she could find. What about this logic virus of yours? She asked Park. Could we use it on a larger scale? Maybe, but the Overmind will be prepared. For it now, we surprised them once, we won't get that chance again. It was Captain Elena Vasquez who provided the next breakthrough. Her Marines had been studying the biological samples recovered from the hive ship, looking for weaknesses they could exploit. What they found changed everything. Admiral, you need to see this, Vasquez reported. From the science lab, the swarm creatures aren't just connected by quantum entanglement, they're physically dependent on it. Cut them off from the hive mind and they start dying within hours. Dr. Park looked up from his microscope with excitement. Of course, it's not just communication, it's life support. The Overmind doesn't just coordinate them, it keeps them alive. If we could somehow block that signal, we'd kill the entire swarm, Chen finished. How do we do it? We'd need to get close to the Overmind itself, Park explained. Plan a quantum disruptor right in its neural center, but Admiral, that would mean a suicide mission. Nothing could survive that deep in swarm territory. Chen studied the data with the cold calculation of a career military officer. Maybe nothing could survive, but something might be able to get in and out fast enough to do the job. Plan that emerged over the next 3 days was audacious, even by human standards. A small strike force would penetrate deep into swarm territory, fight their way to the Overmind itself, and plant a quantum disruptor in its neural core. The disruption would propagate through the quantum network, severing the connection between the Overmind and every swarm creature in the galaxy. It was exactly the kind of insane, impossible plan that humans specialized in. I'm leading the strike team, Vasquez announced when Chen briefed the senior officers. Elena, this is a one-way mission, Chen reminded her. We don't have the ships to fight our way back out. Vasquez smiled with the confidence of someone who had grown up on a world that tried to kill her every day. Admiral, my Marines and I volunteered for this job, knowing it might mean dying to protect people we've never met. That's what humans do. The strike force consisted of 12 ships, the fastest, most heavily armed vessels in the fleet. Each one was loaded with Marines, scientists, and enough firepower to level a small planet. They would have one chance to reach the Overmind before the entire swarm converged on them. Crystal Prime watched the preparations with a mixture of awe and horror. The humans were planning to sacrifice themselves to save not just the Zephyrians, but potentially every peaceful species in the galaxy. It was the kind of noble gesture she had hoped for when she sent the distress beacon, but the methods they were using were pure violence, planned with the efficiency of a species that had evolved to wage war. She found herself wondering if saving the galaxy was worth unleashing these Deathworld warriors on it. You don't understand what you're doing, she told Admiral Chen during their final meeting. If you succeed, if you destroy the swarm, the galaxy will know about your species. They'll know what you're capable of. Everything will change. Chen looked out at the stars through the Valky's main viewport. Maybe it's time for a change. The galaxy's been peaceful for so long that you forgot there are monsters out there. Sometimes you need monsters of your own to fight them. The strike force launched at dawn ship time, 12 human vessels racing toward the galactic core, where the Overmind waited in the darkness. Between stars, they traveled in complete radio silence, using only quantum encrypted burst transmissions to coordinate their movements. They were detected 3 days out from their target. The swarm's response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of bioships converged on their position from every direction, creating a wall of living metal and bone that stretched across light years. "Well, that's not good," Commander Jackson muttered from the bridge of the UES Hammer, watching his sensors light up with hostile contacts. "All ships combat formation, Admiral," Chen ordered from the lead ship. "Remember, we only need to get one ship through, everyone else buy them time." What followed was the largest space battle in human history, 12 ships against thousands, fighting with the desperate courage of people who knew they were already dead. Human tactics developed in the crucible of a death world met swarm bioweapons that had conquered most of the galaxy. The humans should have been annihilated in minutes. Instead, they carved a path of destruction through the swarm fleet that would be remembered for generations. They used ramming attacks, self-destruct sequences, and tactics so aggressive that the swarm couldn't adapt fast enough. Ship after ship fell, but not before taking dozens of bioships with them. The Hammer sacrificed itself to clear a path for the Reaper. The Reaper died protecting the Phoenix. One by one, the human ships were destroyed, but each loss brought Vasquez and her assault team closer to their target. In the end, only the UES Defiant remained, racing toward the Overmind with its hull breached and its engines failing. Captain Sarah Mitchell, bleeding from a dozen wounds, kept her ship flying through sheer determination and the kind of stubborn refusal to die that was humanity's greatest strength. "There it is," she announced as the Overmind came into visual range. "Jesus Christ, it's bigger than Luna." The ancient bioconstruct filled their screens, a nightmare fusion of flesh and metal that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. Around it, 1,000 hive ships formed protective rings, their weapons already firing at the approaching human vessel. "Get me close enough for a boarding pod launch," Vasquez ordered from the assault bay. "That's all I need." Mitchell dove the Defiant straight at the Overmind surface, dodging bioweapon fire with moves that would have been impossible for any pilot not trained in Earth's gravity wells and storm systems. The ship shuddered and groaned under the assault, but held together long enough for Vasquez to launch. The boarding pod hit the Overmind's neural surface and burrowed deep, carrying Vasquez and her quantum disruptor into the creature's brain. What she found there was beyond description, a vast intelligence older than human civilization, filled with the memories of every species it had consumed. The Overmind tried to communicate with her, offering knowledge, power, even immortality, but Vasquez was a Marine from Earth, and she had a job to do. She planted the disruptor in the deepest neural cluster she could find and activated it with her dying breath. The effect was instantaneous. The quantum network that connected every swarm creature across the galaxy simply stopped. In star systems light years away, biohips went dark and drifted lifeless through space. New galactic order. 6 months after the destruction of the Overmind, Crystal Prime stood in what had once been the Zapirian Council Chamber. The beautiful crystal architecture remained unchanged, but everything else was different. Where once only peaceful Zafarans had gathered, now beings from dozens of species filled the space. They had come from across the galaxy to see the humans for themselves. The change had started slowly, a grateful message from the Altarian Republic, whose colonies the swarm had been approaching when it died. A cautious inquiry from the Century Federation about establishing trade relations. Within weeks it had become a flood of diplomatic contacts from species that had never heard of Earth, but had heard what humans could do. The Andromedan Embassy has requested another meeting, reported Crystal Aid Azure, his blue light flickering with nervous energy. They want to discuss hiring human military advisors. Harmony felt the familiar mixture of gratitude and worry that had become her constant companion. The humans had saved not just the Zapirians but potentially every peaceful species in the galaxy, but in doing so they had revealed themselves to be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Schedule it for tomorrow, she decided after the Terran delegation arrives. The Terran delegation was led by Ambassador Jennifer Chen, Admiral Sarah Chen's younger sister and Earth's first interstellar diplomat, where they Admiral was direct and military. In bearing, the ambassador was smooth and political, but both women shared the same steel backbone that seemed common to their species, prime harmony. Ambassador Chen said as she entered the chamber, flanked by her security detail. Thank you for hosting these talks. I know the situation is complicated. Complicated was an understatement. In the 6 months since the swarm's defeat, 17 different species had formally requested human military protection. 3 others had offered technology transfers in exchange for human peacekeeping forces. The peaceful galaxy that had existed for millennia was rapidly reorganizing itself around the assumption that the humans would serve as its military arm. The problem was that Earth's government had never planned for this. Humanity had 3 deep space fleets, maybe 50,000 trained military personnel who could operate in alien environments, and absolutely no experience managing galactic politics. They were desperately trying to catch up to a situation that was evolving faster than anyone could control. Ambassador Harmony began carefully. We need to discuss the vegan situation. The vegan hegemony was a mid-level power that had been neutral in galactic politics for centuries, but with the swarm gone, they had begun expanding aggressively into former swarm territory. 3 species had already filed complaints about vegan annexation of their recovery efforts. We're aware of the situation, Chen replied, but Earth's position remains the same. We're not galactic police. We responded to your distress call because you were facing extinction. That doesn't make us responsible for every territorial dispute in the galaxy, but you are responsible, interrupted a new voice. The speaker was Ambassador Zara of the Centauri Federation, a tall, elegant being with silver skin and large black eyes. Whether you intended it or not, your actions have destabilized the entire galactic order. Species that were peaceful are now expanding because they think military might is the new standard. Others are desperately seeking human protection because they're afraid of being conquered. Chen leaned back in her chair, a gesture that looked casual, but Harmony had learned to recognize as dangerous. Humans often appeared most relaxed when they were most angry. So, what exactly are you suggesting? Chen asked quietly. Partnership, Zara said. Immediately, the Centauri Federation is prepared to offer Earth full membership, along with access to our technology, trade networks, and scientific databases. In exchange, Earth provides military protection for Federation worlds, and what about the rest of us? Demanded Ambassador Thex of the Andromedan Republic, his insectoid features clicked with agitation. The Federation gets exclusive access to human military power while the rest of us are left vulnerable. The Republic is welcome to make its own offer, Zara replied. Smoothly, Chen watched the argument develop with the detached interest of someone studying an alien ecosystem. This was exactly what Earth's government had feared, getting drawn into galactic politics that they didn't understand, with consequences they couldn't predict. Let me be very clear about something, Chen said, her voice cutting through the debate like a blade. Earth will not become anyone's private army. We will not choose sides in territorial disputes or trade wars, and we will not allow anyone to use our military reputation to threaten their neighbors. Then what will you do? Harmony asked. Because Ambassador Zara is correct. Your victory over the swarm has changed everything. The galaxy needs leadership, and like it or not, you're the only species with the military power to provide it. Chen was quiet for a long moment, weighing options that would affect billions of lives across hundreds of star systems. Finally, she reached a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. We'll create something new, she announced, a galactic defense corps, jointly administered by Earth and the Zapirian Collective. Human military personnel will serve as the backbone, but governance will be shared among all member species. Any species that faces an extinction-level threat can request protection. In exchange, member species contribute resources, technology, and personnel to the common defense. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. It was ambitious beyond anything the galaxy had ever attempted. A military alliance that spanned star systems, administered jointly by the galaxy's newest military power and its oldest peaceful civilization. The Centauri Federation would be interested in membership, Zara said carefully, as with the Andromedan Republic. Thex added one by one. The ambassadors in the room expressed interest. Within hours, the basic framework of the Galactic Defense Corps was taking shape. It would be headquartered on a joint station built in neutral space, with human military commanders working alongside alien administrators and scientists. But the real test came 2 months later, when the hegemony war erupted. The vegan hegemony had continued its aggressive expansion, finally attacking a small species called the Quillians. The Quillians' request for GDC protection arrived at the new headquarters station just as Admiral Sarah Chen was taking command of the military division. 17 Vagan battleships against maybe 1 million civilian Quillians, reported Commander Rodriguez, now serving as Chen's chief of staff. It's not a war, it's extermination. Chen studied the tactical reports with the same cold focus she'd brought to fighting the swarm. The vegans were powerful with technology roughly equivalent to early human equipment, but they had made the same mistake that doomed most aggressive species in the galaxy. They had never fought anyone who fought back. Deploy the second fleet, she ordered. Rules of engagement are to protect Quillian civilians and demand Vagan withdrawal if they refuse. She paused, thinking of Captain Vasquez and all the others who had died to protect strangers. If they refuse, remind them why peaceful species call us for help. The Battle of Quill, lasted exactly 47 minutes. The Vagan fleet arrived, expecting to face the usual helpless civilians. Instead, they found 12 human warships waiting in defensive formation. When the vegan commander demanded the humans withdraw, Admiral Chen's response was broadcast across the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Galactic Defense Corps. The Quillian people have requested our protection, which we are bound by treaty to provide. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system before we consider you a hostile force. The vegan attack began 20 seconds later. It ended when the last vegan ship either surrendered or fled the system. Not a single Quillian civilian was harmed. The aftermath sent shock waves across the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, an aggressive species had been decisively defeated by someone acting purely in defense of another species. The message was clear. The age of easy conquest was over. Within a year, the Galactic Defense Corps had grown to include 47 member species. Human fleets patrolled trade routes, protected colonies, and deterred aggression across 1,000-star systems. But it wasn't just human military power that made the system work. The real genius of the GDC was how it combined human tactical thinking with alien expertise in other areas. Zephyrian scientists developed new medical technologies using human biological data. Century engineers improved human ship designs with more efficient power systems. Andromedan mathematicians worked with human strategists to create new tactical doctrines. Crystal Prime Harmony often stood on the observation deck of the GDC headquarters station, watching human children play with young Zephyrians in the station's crystal gardens. The sight never failed to amaze her. 6 months ago, she had sent a desperate plea into the void, hoping for salvation. She had received something she never could have imagined, a partnership between warriors and peaceful beings that was making the galaxy safer for everyone. Beautiful sight, isn't it? Ambassador Chen said, joining her at the observation window. Terrifying, Harmony replied honestly. But beautiful too.